All right. Good afternoon. I'm Ann Ball, Program Director at the Maine Downtown Center, and I am here with Joanna Chris. She's in the top of my screen. I'm not sure where she is on the rest of you. And I'm really glad to say we have a really good sized group coming in for this afternoon's workshop. The reason we asked Kathy to do this workshop and the reason we felt like the topic was so important was based on the life we're all living right now, and especially based on the findings from the Downtown Together phone calls that all of our Main Streets and affiliates received in May from our staff. And this really is the top priority, which is how does the Main Street model work and the three-legged stool of fundraising work in a pandemic. And we also have been talking about cash flow issues and how to, budget and spread out donations that come in one part of the year. So we will also have our finance director, Lori Bowie, joining us a little bit later this afternoon. So before I get started, Joanna, would you like to share your screen and just put up the agenda for a quick reminder for everybody of what we're covering? And then I will introduce our trainer, who most of you know. There we go. Everybody should see what is going to be covered this afternoon. We will have some polls for you to participate in. We encourage you to use the chat feature as much as you'd like for asking questions throughout the presentation. The chat feature should be located at the bottom of your screen. You can hover over it and click on it, and there's a place to type in questions, say hello, or there are reactions of clapping hands and thumbs up, things like that. So we encourage this to be as active a meeting as we can make a Zoom meeting. And then, as I said, we have some polls, and I'm gonna mute everybody because I hear some background noise. Great. I have muted everybody, but everybody can unmute if they would like to say anything. We do have a big enough group today that I do think the chat will be a better way to manage all of you and the questions. We're recording the meeting in case you have a board member, a treasurer who would like to take advantage of this information at a later time. Let's see, Joanna, what am I forgetting? Can't think of anything? Okay. Our speaker, our trainer, we are so happy to have Kathy LaPlante here with us from the National Main Street Center, who has a long history as a Main Street director, as well as working for National Main Street for how many years, Kathy?
13.
13, and she's currently living in New Hampshire, so we have those great New England connections with her, and I think originally hails from Wisconsin, right?
That's right.
So we're really glad to have Kathy with us. And Joanna, do you want to stop sharing your screen? Great. And then Kathy, you want to start sharing your screen and just let me know when we have polls to launch. And like I said, we're recording it, and we're excited to have you all here. It's a good group. Kathy, I can tell by looking at the screen, as you saw the registration list, we have Main Street directors. I see some treasurers, some board members, presidents. I see a number of our affiliate communities, those that have staff and volunteers from others. So it looks like we have a whole range of our 27 communities. We even have our first and only neighborhood affiliate community, Friends of Woodford's Corner in Portland. I see Nancy Grant. So lots of people here today, and I hope really everyone feels free to ask questions and get a lot out of today. So Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Let's see, there we go. I think I actually went back to my desktop screen. Thanks everybody, and so good to see all my Maine friends online. This is so much better than just doing a webinar where I don't see anybody and I'm just talking, and although I can't hear you. There's Phil. Hi, Phil. Is
Hello?
that I know I won't hear you respond necessarily to some of the things I'm presenting, but it's nice to have the chat feature and know you're all out there. One of the things we wanted to start with, and we know, first off, I want to give you all a big pat on the back for everything that you're doing out there, and you know, trying to keep the funding going for your programs while helping small businesses and still trying to do some projects and keep some progress going in downtown. It's not an easy job. It was a tough job before. It's even tougher now, but I admire everyone who is committed to this. So before we started, we had a couple polls we wanted to put up. In regards to finance or your fundraising plans. There's the first one, which is we're just asking, do you have an annual fundraising plan? So it's just yes or no, have everybody answer it. Do you have a plan that shows where all your income sources are coming from? And is it broken down, or do you just sort of wait till somebody tells you checks are in the bank and your bank balance is $2,000? Do you have an annual fundraising plan?
So it looks like almost everybody's responded, Kathy. I will share the results.
Excellent.
Okay, there are your results, Kathy.
Okay,
It looks like
that's good.
67% do have a annual fundraising plan.
That is excellent. And the ones that were mailed to me in advance, whether you did those just for me and you're now counting that, I appreciate that as well. But I hope that it gave you some guidance on what goes into a fundraising plan. And the second question is about who prepares that fundraising plan.
Okay, hold on one
Pop
second.
that whole question up for us, Ann.
I am trying to do that.
Okay.
Hold on.
So your options on the next one is, you know, does your executive director do it? Does your board of directors do it? Does your organization committee put that in place? Just sort of getting a sense of where does that workload lie in who's doing that? Or does somebody else, does your treasurer or somebody else put together your income plan? Who develops that for your program? We'll give you just a minute to respond to that. I'm so impressed, though, that 67% have a plan, because we've been preaching this for years and years, and it's very useful for our communities to have such a plan. Because
hopefully everybody's finding the way to participate in the plan, and it's pretty easy and intuitive.
Exactly.
We've got about 21, 22, a couple more coming in, Kathy, and then I'll end it for you.
Super.
Okay. And here are the results, Kathy.
Okay. Oh, the organization committee at 50%, board and ED equal, and other 14%. So maybe it's a special finance committee. I know some of you have sort of that resource or fundraising committee that might put it together. And I've been in some communities where they've also used the treasurer. That's a good balance. You know, typically it's going to be approved by your board of directors ultimately. So the fact that the organization committee would take the first go around at it is perfect. All right, great. Thanks, Ann.
You're welcome.
That was very good results. So this is one, you've probably seen this graphic before if you've attended any of my fundraising workshops, in that, you know, before we can get any money out of anybody, we have to get in their heads first, right? What is the program about? What's the project about? And make some connection to them. So that, you know, then they feel like it's something that they also share the same passion for that you do. And once we educate people, get in their minds, and then get in touch their hearts, that is when they open up their wallets to us. That's when they go, that's a very worthy cause. It's a really great project. We really need it. And we want to have that in our charitable giving. So some of the things that we had to look at as organizations right now, and especially how it pertains to fundraising, is what's really happened to your organizations. You had to take a look at, you know, your work plan and say, what can we postpone? What is going to be removed from the work plan? A lot of you have had special events. And where can funds be saved or redirected? So thinking about what events ahead will be canceled. You know, when the pandemic started, we were only looking a few weeks ahead, maybe 2 months ahead. Here we are many months later, and we're still dealing with it. But you'll have to identify what's not urgent. And so, you know, if we had new Christmas banners that we haven't paid for yet, maybe that's not on our urgent list, or we plant less flowers. I hate to say give up facade grants, because we've actually been seeing a lot of work going on yet on buildings now that they aren't as busy, and it's a good time to do work. But you might be cutting back on professional development. Everybody's cut back on travel. Some of you may have had to make decisions with staffing and your support staff, or maybe even some of your hours have gotten cut. So what's going to be your primary mission going through the rest of this year and into 21? And for most communities, that is helping our small businesses survive. We're not going to be around if we don't have that makeup in our downtowns. So we
Kathy?
have to, yes.
This is Ann. I just wanted to say, in our Downtown Together phone calls, that was definitely one of the first priorities. And the other one is actually the surviving of their actual organizations themselves.
That's right up there with what everybody else thinks as well. So our messaging to our partners is, you know, let them know that your board is making strategic choices on delivering the core and most needed services to your district. While we're doing that, we still want to remain optimistic about the future. And I know Main Streeters are the best at remaining optimistic about everything. Even when your events get rained out, I find Main Streeters can see the sunny side of that. But we have to be optimistic about the future and the recovery for downtown. And so many of our other webinars have kind of focused on that, like, you know, people wanting to get out of the big cities and moving to a more rural environment because it's a safer place. And, you know, why not look at really good quality of life where you can be outdoors and such. You know, that we might have pay back any loans or credit lines that we might get. You'll want to reinstate programs whenever they're financially feasible if we happen to get them cut. So if you did have a facade grant program that you were funding, you know, not out of a city program, and you need that money to operate, but you can say, hey, it'll be back when we're able to do that. I think that's a good idea. And then you have to come up with ways to figure out where that lost revenue is going to come from, especially from canceled events. And I would say to acknowledge to people that, you know, even if you're asking them for money now, you might be back in a month or 2 months or 6 months to ask for additional funding as well. So now is the time for a very strong message to the community and to the city about your purpose and your mission. And if you all look back at your mission statements, you almost have to have a COVID-19 mission statement now. We'd recommend that, you know, to say, here's who we are. And through this time, this is where our energies and our focus will be to get all resources that are going to help our businesses and our organizations survive. And beyond that, we're not doing the art shows or maybe the car shows, although I've heard about some places where they are still doing those larger scale events. You know, here was, you know, one example right after COVID hit that, you know, basically said our country's small businesses are suffering. And, you know, we gave recommendations to people on how to help our small businesses because we didn't know it was going to go on this long. We said, order takeout, get gift certificates, but shop small. And so our message though is really, because I think some of your funding from your municipality or other places might be cut, is really to tell them what an essential organization you are right now. And you are the best organization that is in place right now to help your businesses get through this. I know many of you, helped your businesses fill out the payroll protection program loan applications, and have been pushing out resources out the door right and left to businesses whenever you see them. When American Express had their grant program, now with the Hartford grant program, we know that you're the one that is supplying that information to your businesses. I just had a couple examples of some things that I saw put out recently. I think one or two of these I showed in the webinar I did with Donna Ann Harris when we talked about doing your organizational health checkup. I think that was back in April. But this one is from Menominee, Wisconsin, and they really just talk about, the virus's impact on our downtown as apparent. But our top priority and a focus as an organization will be to provide that assistance to businesses, property owners, and affected employees within our district. And again, those positive messages. This is the time to come together as a community to ensure our downtown remains vibrant. And so it's sort of like, what is that messaging and how often do you put it out? Again, here's one from Harrisonburg, Virginia. These are unprecedented times and there's a lot of uncertainty, but we know it'll pass. We still want to be a unified community when we come out of it. And, together we can really help our community and our downtown recover. And they established a resiliency fund that was funding that went directly to small businesses. And then one from here in New Hampshire from Nashua. Again, start with the positive take on it. Ours is a resilient community. You've all probably weathered some fires and tragedies in the past. This one is one that we don't have experience with because it has impacted us in so many ways. But I just love that, we're still communicating and talking with people, letting them know, because I know some organizations kind of went into hibernation. They said, oh, well, our board can't meet, so we're not doing anything. Well, yeah, those programs will be in trouble. The ones, though, that have a good communications plan are going to be the ones that are most effective. So telling your story, focus on what you're doing now to help businesses. If you got a business resource center, how you are helping businesses one-on-one. What do you do to, what are you planning to jumpstart the economy? And many of you have put those things in place now. And I'm going to show you a couple little samples of what some communities did. But, we started doing some things to try and help our businesses early on. And again, that communications point. So what we always tout is you have to show the value of your organization. Those that haven't had good communications with their city, good relationships with their city, it's hard to tell that story. It's hard to tell it if you only show up at city council once a year to ask for the funding. So you're going to have to start to ramp up your communications. And also our focus is trying to maintain some community traditions. We know people in our towns are crying out to get together and do things with each other. And so we're so tempted to, have our concerts in the park or the movies to get people together. It's just not safe in many instances. So, but we want to protect that. We want to bring those things back when it's safe to do it. And so with the fundraising plan, and so many of you did send your plans to me ahead of time, it really is just getting a good idea what your financial picture is going to look like for the year. This is Meredith's plan from 2007 when I was the New Hampshire Main Street coordinator, but a very simple plan for them. They're a small community. $68,000 budget was really good for Meredith, but if they want to increase it, it's so much easier to look at this and go, where can we get, if they wanted to get another $5,000 raised, it's so easy to look at it and go, well, the town certainly isn't pulling their weight, right? When we say a third, and a third. So how about we go ask the town for another 2,500 and tell them we'll go to the private sector to raise another 2,500. And then you can look at the rest of it and say, well, are we going to ramp up our individual giving? Might we try to do a little bit more with retail sales? But it helps you really take a better look at where your money is coming from. So when you need to increase it, you can look at it and have a better idea where your opportunities might be for that. Might even be in raising more money during your fundraisers as well. I'm going to go through each of those categories real quickly and sort of touch on the key points with each one. And then at the end of this, we're going to have you go into 4 breakout rooms where I want you to share your ideas and successes or share what's going on in your communities. And hopefully you're going to come away from this workshop with some ideas on either where you can secure more money or some new things to try. Why should public funding and sector funding come to Main Street? And it was so good to see how much you all do get from your cities. This stays the same. These answers haven't changed due to COVID. But you're focused on downtown. You can leverage private sector dollars against their public sector dollars. It gets more buy-in in the community. It helps them cut costs because you're doing work on behalf of the city. There's a greater economic impact, and there's a stronger economic base because you're there, excuse me, and you're enhancing the quality of life in your community. So that's why we say municipalities should be the #1 supporter of Main Street programs, because they are also the #1 benefactor, excuse me, of the work that you're doing through increased sales taxes, property values, job creation, business creation, all those things that you're working on. So Maine's municipal funding, I looked at, averages about $40,000 a year from those of you who submitted your budgets to me. A low of $30,000 a year, and one city gets $100,000 from their municipality. So those are some good numbers. And so you got the 3-stool idea, or the 3-legged stool idea, going on really well. But we also have to have an idea what impacts your cities and towns are going to have from COVID as well. So don't worry about your own financial picture. Try to get an understanding of what your city or municipality is going through as well. And how will you show, sorry, that little pop-up screen popped up right on top of my box. How will you show that Main Street is the best investment for them to make? You know, if you're only getting $30,000, that's a small piece of pie in the greater scheme of municipal budget. So, you know, what is their best investment for giving that $30,000? Is it that you're going to hopefully save 2 or 3 businesses from that because you're able to help them? But you ought to be able to tell that story. So how do we increase or ensure? I said assuring, continuing, or increasing city funding, because some of your other sources might be limited. Some of you may be actually going to your municipality and asking for more money versus less, because your job has become much tougher and greater. So who are you communicating with? The mayor individually, the city council together and as individuals, and your town or city administrators. All of those people should be on your communication list. And what's your message to them? Updating them obviously on how businesses are doing, keeping them abreast of the economy in downtown, changes both positive and negative. And what are you going to be able to do that's going to either ease their workload or improve the economics of the community? Those are the things that they need to hear, not just that you're a nonprofit and you need the money to pay the executive director's salary. But what are some of the markers that you're going to hold out? So we need to educate those people. I'm sure many of you shared the small business report, sharing with them also how your businesses are doing, Always write those things down from your businesses, but give them a clear financial picture of your own organization as well. And share the value of dedicated staff working on downtown. That goes back to our basic message about why Main Street works is we have somebody here who's working toward the betterment of downtown every day. And don't forget about the volunteer hours either. This is not an organization that your community wants to lose. It'll take much longer to recover, which we found out through our John Stover study. Gosh, that was about a year and a half ago, where he compared Main Street communities to non-Main Street communities, and our business growth, our reinvestment growth was so much greater than any community that didn't have a Main Street program. So you don't want to go backwards. And as I said earlier, understand their goals. What are they facing in cutback? Where are they losing their money? And how are you going to be able to help? So if sales tax revenues are dropping off, if that's something they get part of, then you would, keep track and see how well we're bringing business back downtown. And so we're helping in that area as well. And, sorry, the screen pops up. I can't see my bottom slide. So I'm going to move on. So what are you doing ahead? These are some of the things that are happening under the 4 points. You're trying to replace major funding sources. Excuse me, you have a loss in volunteers and susceptible population. We hear a lot of baby boomers are dropping off, but millennials and Gen Xers are stepping up in volunteering. You're working on creating outdoor spaces for your businesses to use to survive. You're still working on property improvements, and you're working on trying to make downtown be safe so people will come back. We'll talk about some of those things as well. Under promotion, you're losing sponsorships from your special events that have been income producers, and you need funding to promote Shop Local, which is a big message right now. Under economic vitality, a lot of assistance is going, a lot of time is going into assisting businesses find financial resources to survive, and then helping those businesses with new business models, selling online, making their businesses safer for their employees and staff. So some of the things that communities have been doing is using city money for rent relief or that business assistance. This is a program that went on in one of the neighborhood districts in Oklahoma City that they partnered with a couple foundations and their Main Street program. And, it's a little bit of money. 14 businesses were helped, but those 14 businesses are still open and operating because of that little bit of help that they received. Some communities are using some of their city money to offset the cost of gift cards in their downtown. This is an example of Milk Money in Orlando, Florida. You can buy a $10 gift card for $7.50. Then that automatically starts generating new sales in downtown. Consumers save, but they get some money that is now being spent within the downtown district. So it's a sale on downtown. So what are city funds being used for? A couple examples here. Nampa, Idaho, they're putting down boards through parking spaces so restaurants can be out onto the street. In Rochester, Michigan, they removed all paid parking in downtown as a way to help businesses. So what do your businesses need, and how can the city help out with that? Because it isn't just about fund, we have to look at sort of sharing that funding. The city is in trouble. How can we generate more sales? Hey, free parking might be the thing that does it for people. If they don't have to pay for that, they might come back downtown. And just make sure you're touting your past accomplishments as well. You can get back to the places. Last year was almost a record year for many Main Street cities in reinvestment, new businesses. So we're coming off one of our best years and coming into like probably our worst year we've ever had. So tout your past performance and hopefully let them know we're going to get there again to another spot as well. The second area is annual campaigns, and your typical annual campaigns looked like this, right? We had a campaign, we had, somebody who was leading it. We got, somebody of notoriety to lead the campaign. All our board members gave money. We set goals. We asked for multi-year pledgers, and we identified the people we're going after, and we sort of set a timeline for that. A lot of that still pertains even though we're in COVID. We can still run some sort of organized campaigns. It might be to more focused audiences. It might be going back to people that used to give to our campaigns as well. Again, with messaging, it's, during these uncertain times, your annual support is needed more than ever. So include, again, how your organization is responding and that we need that assistance moving forward, right? You could do it via an email campaign, subject line coronavirus consequences, emergency funds needed. Make sure there's some urgency to it, especially if you are urgently needing funding right now. Some of you are probably okay for 6 months. Some of you might have $200 in your checking account. So you can make it sound urgent. Again, just do that description of how it's being impacted. Share some success stories. Tell them how they're going to use your money, and let them know that, nobody planned for this. It wasn't in your budget. Even a rainy day fund would have you, be a hard time to get through, even with a rainy day fund. So you didn't plan for it, but we hope they'll help. I got this letter from Skowhegan, in 2015, and I still think personalized messages work. I got 2 nice notes on the bottom thanking me for my past support, which I had found out was 10 years prior to the time that they asked me. So sometimes you need to dig into who has given you money in the past and say, hey, we need you now more than ever, right? So they found me and sent me a letter with their kit. We also need to maybe think about who's doing really well in our communities. We know our small businesses because they can't be open, or they're very limited in people coming due to the safety factor, but there are some businesses that are doing better than others. There are probably people we maybe have not approached in the past. Professionals, industrial businesses, our grocery store warehouse, which is just down the street from my house in Pembroke, hired 100 people when the pandemic hit, because grocery stores were going, they were very busy. Utilities, phone companies, cable, none of those bills have gone down for me during COVID. More so, they've gone up, right? So those people are making money. RV and camper dealers, bike shops, pool companies. And unfortunately, a lot of national chains have done well. So when you all figure out how to get them to give to you, share it with everybody else. But you might have some other business locally that also are doing fairly well. I've shared this slide before too, which is how many businesses are making money off of your downtown but are not located there. And this goes back to when I was an executive director, and we just went out and stood on the corner and watched those commercial vehicles come into our downtown. Now, I always said Cisco Systems is a good one, but with our restaurants so shut down, I think they're hurting as well. But sometimes a letter campaign just to these people to say, you've made money off of our downtown by not being here. We want to challenge you to support our downtown so we can survive and business can come back to you in the future. Make sure you're doing online payments. If that's through PayPal or you accept credit cards, you need to make it easy for people to give to you. I love the setup where that you can now sign up for monthly donations. I think that's going to work well also when we talk about the residential component. And just make sure that, that other note about doesn't match up with the investor guide was another community I was working with, but making sure that we actually can, people can make contributions very easy. So how do we grow that investor base? What can board members do to support from in the district and outside the district challenge your board members to come up with new contacts who have maybe never been solicited for Main Street before, who but have a desire to make sure that their community survives through this. I think people are very open to requests coming in now. Is now the time to tap into support from former board members. Some of your organizations are, let's see, 20 years old, I think by now in Maine, might be even older than that. Are they people that you can tap into to be the face of a fundraising drive, or either to make a significant contribution, offer payment plans? And if you do have businesses who made a pledge to you, but they're not doing well, might they be able to reduce that, or can you ask them if you can approach them in January and see how they're doing then? It's better to just be concerned about the business and giving them some options to still support you. The next category I wanted to talk about, and Ann, I stole that photo off your Facebook page because I thought it was cool. In the residential category, from those that submitted reports to me, 5 of the 6 communities reported income from residents, which is good. Amounts range from $900 to $7,000 a piece. So on average, those that submitted to me were getting about $3,000 a year per community from residents. I looked at some websites of yours. At least one of your communities doesn't even have a donate button anywhere on the page to give money to you. So you might want to visit your web pages and make sure that that possibility is there. People still want to support you. You just need to show them how to do that. This is an example from Jasper, Alabama. You see their donate button way over on the end, and that's the typical place that most donor buttons are. It's like the last thing, and I just think it's the most important thing. And then I found Siloam Springs, Arkansas. This is their homepage, and the very first thing you see is donate. So now is the time for that to be your primary message. If it's to donate to support your organization or the small businesses, that you should invest some time in updating your website to put your donate in a lot more prominent place than off to the side. In residential giving, there's a few ways to do it. Some communities have done these kinds of brochures, whether you want 100 volunteers or you want 1,000 volunteers. These are places that typically a friend of downtown or a resident would be less than $100 or $100 or less. But what about the philanthropists in our communities that, we should be getting $5,000 or $10,000 through them? When we break out into the residential group, I'd love for you to talk about what's the best way to reach them. Is it through social media? Is it through snail mail? Do we have to do a glossy brochure to get that done? We hate to be spending money to make money, but I think social media is probably a good friend of ours now. This one comes out of my archives, but I have used this several times to teach people about when we get people giving as friends or at a lower level, that you can ask them to give more than once. And I think I had done Biddeford's program review probably in 2008, a long time ago. But then I wrote a check to him, and then I got this at Thanksgiving that said, "Dear Kathy, basically, we're thankful you give to us. We hope you're thankful for what we do. You can click right here and make another donation." And they said, a donation of any size is greatly appreciated. Well, I thought it was such a clever idea. I donated again. And then Thanksgiving came, and I get this email from the Heart of Biddeford, and they say, "We love our downtown. We hope you love it too. Click here and make a donation of any size." So that's what you can do with that friends group or that residential group. They're used to making contributions to organizations that mean a lot to them more than once or twice a year. Having just bought car raffle tickets from NHPR and a sustaining member, I know how they get you a couple times. I love this other one that Biddeford did recently, not necessarily to raise money for themselves, but to raise money to support the restaurants in downtown. Again, it kind of goes hand in hand with the work we're doing to help our businesses survive. We didn't raise the money for ourselves, but it means almost as much or as much to help us support our businesses. I love the message there. In these tough times, you know, through our community, we can help support the businesses and then also support our frontline workers by giving them food from those communities. I saw this one recently from West Memphis, Arkansas, that they did a raffle. And I saw some of you had raffles as well. Just by making any kind of donation, you would be entered. You didn't have to buy a $1 raffle ticket. They were looking for any kind of donation. And I thought, well, it's a no-show event, winner to be chosen in August. Another example might be having a lead citizen host something. So if you're mayor, a doctor, somebody in your community who knows influential people might invite 10 to 20 to come to their home. Again, small gatherings, social distancing. And here a pitch for Main Street. I handed out awards in Alabama last year at their awards program or conference. And one doctor did an event. They were trying to raise $5,000 towards wayfinding signs, and they netted over $15,000. So those kinds of events can be very impactful as well. This one from Charlestown, West Virginia, you know, just small ways to engage people. They had a little scavenger hunt that they, you know, cost $5 or free with the purchase of a Charlestown Now card. Sometimes we have to look at the small ways that are going to bring money into your program. But this one benefited too because it also became a promotional thing where people came to participate in the scavenger hunt. Sometimes the clues were just in the windows, so they didn't have to go in. But of course, it makes sense when those merchants put something in the window that might bring those people back to downtown. Another thing they did, and you can look for this Facebook page, you should, Charlestown Now. I shared it on my Facebook page. You have to hear the song that they are singing. It's called Keep on Rockin' That Curbside. I loved it because of the positive message to it, but I loved how they changed their logo as well. Community is built on Main Street. In our case, that is downtown Charlestown, historically hip. Again, it's that positive message to people. The fourth category is special event income. A lot of your events have been canceled, some postponed, some scaled back. Probably 95% of them not bringing in the income that they brought in last year or what you had anticipated bringing in this year. So this is the Ladybug Festival in Milford, Delaware, and they took it all virtual. Still a 2-day festival. They were doing, you know, music, entertainment, artist showings, etc., all throughout that event. So event impact in Maine. Again, I think from the 6 or 7 plans that I got turned in, over $300,000 in anticipated 2020 was going to be brought in through your special events. That's a significant number. It was actually a bit over $300,000. And Skowhegan, they do a killer job with their events. So when I took them out of the mix, because I think it was over 150,000, on average, communities brought in about $27,000 a year through special events. I know in many that might not be your net income from it because you also have expenses, but it still is a significant amount of money that you're raising through sponsorship. So how do we get that money back in? Can we still do the lobster trap raffle in Rockland without with COVID in place? Maybe that is going to happen again this year. Some things can happen, some won't. Like I said, about 95% of them have been impacted. Dover, New Hampshire does their art walks virtually now. They're not charging for them. They're just trying to support the artists in their community. I think there might be there might be a way to charge. I also think there might be a way to potentially, you know, each community has to decide these things on their own. But I've talked to communities who are trying to do sip and strolls and art walks in person, but you have to buy a ticket, and they limit the audiences to 100 or 200 people that are spread out over 20, 25 businesses, so that they know that no more than 4 or 5 will be at each business at any given time. And that's a ticketed event. And even though you may have done an art walk or a sip and stroll once a year before, maybe we can do a monthly now, because people are interested in coming out, but they want them to be safe. And they're only going to be safe if they're small gatherings. If at all that works in your community, that's what some communities are doing. It helps the businesses because we're bringing people downtown. We can't do the big, huge sidewalk sales anymore. We have to have some smaller events along the way. This one, Andrea Dono from Harrisonburg, Virginia, shared on The Point last week. Their Sofa Palooza, they felt very bad for the artists and musicians in their community, so started a virtual online concert series. And there were a couple ways to be involved in that. The mini concerts were free, but they asked people to support the organization and the people by doing 2 things. There was a virtual tip jar, and the artist said they did really well with that. And they also asked them to donate to the Small Business Resiliency Grant Fund. So each concert had a sponsor that they lined up for $1,000, 250 went to the musicians, and 750 went to the organization for their Small Business Resiliency Fund. What Andrea noted, though, she said, was none went to our organization, but I don't advise that. I don't advise that either. If you're going to do all that work out a piece of the proceeds to come to yourselves.
Kathy, there's one comment in the chat that just said, Rockland Main Street Board is very dedicated to the trap tree, which I know was a couple examples ago, but I just wanted to let you know that.
Excellent. I kind of thought that I had to, that was like the last photo I added to this. I'm like, where's my lobster trap tree? I got to go find that. And I did find it. So I was happy to put that in there, and I thought they could do that. Raffles seem to be working for communities. So good to hear that, Rockland. That's a good one, and I love talking about that. You should know every time I do a fundraising workshop, I talk about it. Except in Nevada, they don't get the lobster thing in Nevada. You know, here was Concord's big sidewalk sales. I think, you know, like Portsmouth has Market Square Days, and I'm sure many of your communities do it. This has typically been an event in Concord that over 3 days raises $30,000 for their organization. They recently changed it to Market Month. And so now, now they don't have all that vendor income coming in, because they did sell space to a lot of outside food vendors. They charged all the businesses to be outside. They brought in bands and kids games and all of that. So they were cutting expenses, but also cutting their income. So it sort of worked out in the end, but they're still having to market month. So they asked sponsors to continue on to help support that promotion that has to go on for the entire month. So you have to, you know, talk to your sponsors of any of these activities and see if they might shift it to some other important initiative you have. This was an idea that I had in my fundraising workshop presentation before COVID hit, and I have seen discussion going on with our Main Street communities about what's everybody going to do about Halloween and Christmas, and do we think events will be happening then? So I left this one in here because I thought Well, can we have Halloween? I'm not sure if it's a good idea. We'll have to see when we get to October. But Ponca City actually made $5,000. And I thought, well, that's great because I've never heard of any community that actually made money off of Halloween. It's always a very big expense for businesses to buy candy. They might not be in a position to do that this year. But they sold $2 wristbands, and then they got corporations and businesses in the community to buy those bands. And so if kids couldn't afford them, they would hand out the bands to them. So you had to have a band to come to the event, which cut down on kids coming from other cities because they weren't really sure how to get a band. But $5,000 off of Halloween, it might be that little plug you need in your budget to make it through the end of the year. So might think about that in the future. And then, you know, when we can have crowds again together, or, you know, when we can get back, I always like to talk about just making sure we charge admission. I saw this one from Lake Orion, Michigan, that they actually charge for fireworks. And I thought, well, that's cool. You know, that, you know, people were spread out all over. It's kind of like an honor system thing, but why not do it? And then this is Seafood Fest in Hampton Beach going on. They get 100,000 people to that event. And they ask people to make a $5 donation as they funnel in to the activity grounds. Major ways to help pay for those special events when they can come back online. So when we are shifting sponsorships, and Jane, there you are in the middle of that photo, that also is from my archives, is be in communication with your sponsors, you know, so don't let them find out that your event is being canceled in the newspaper. You should be calling ahead for any events that are still out there that they've signed up to be a sponsor for, to see if they might align themselves with some of the other work you're doing. You know, say, we're sorry, you know, we had to pull the plug by standards set in the state and the safety of our community. We can't go forward with it, but we have an urgent need for this. And ask them if they will keep their funds committed to you. And maybe that's giving them first right of refusal as being the lead sponsor for the next year, or if they leave their sponsorship money with you, they won't have a price increase next year. They can come in for the same amount of money, and maybe you can get creative about any other benefits that they might get along the way. You know, I've heard a lot of success with people doing that. Don't just assume because you cancel the event that you're going to lose all the sponsors from that event. If it was because they got their name on 100 posters and on your marketing material, how can you still give them some support for the money that they are giving to you? And hopefully we convert them to just regular givers, and it doesn't have to be tied to an event in the future. But for now, it goes back to that messaging about these are times we did not expect. We think we can still bring some benefit to your business and company if we can say you're funding our small business assistance program or the rental program, or just to help us pay our rent for the next month or two. The next category is merchandise sales. And you know, they're certainly selling merchandise can raise some money for you. Sometimes I know some of you have done merchandise that you give away. I have a lot of swag on my shelves here in my office from places that I've either gotten stuff or bought stuff. It's good for the promotion and marketing of your organization. People using that water bottle, they see your name on it. For Saco and your ice cream stand, that, you know, that's selling merchandise by offering products to people. And Skowhegan, I saw they had cookbook sales last year that were pretty phenomenal. That is sharing community recipes, so they can serve a lot of purposes, right? Here's one from Russell, Kansas. Again, better together. It's sort of that positive message. And the sales, for every sale of that t-shirt, $10 goes towards the business of the people's choice. Again, I think Main Street has to be offered as one of those businesses of choice for that $10 to go to, if we have an opportunity to get that funding coming to us. other programs that have done, special t-shirts just through COVID. Morgan City, theirs says blessed by the water, and all that money is going into their program. And Livermore, California, took a cute little play on it, 6 feet apart, connected at the heart. And all the sales of those are going to their business assistance program as well. I think a lot with many people, I think when you're doing programs like that, expect you to retain some of that money for sort of having to handle it. So maybe you have a policy of, if you do something like this and you want to target it to businesses, that 80% goes to that fund and 20% comes back to the Main Street organization, because you're putting in all the work to get that money in the door. Rochester, Michigan, if you follow them on Facebook, or I think we highlighted them as well. They came out with face masks right out of the gate when we needed to start wearing them, and they sold 1,000 of these masks in just 2 days. They were made in a nearby community who had to hire 3 more people just to fulfill that order. I think they're on like their 3rd or 4th order of these face masks now, and now they've actually opened a storefront to sell all of this stuff. It's called the Downtown Resource Center. And they sell everything in there: t-shirts, hats, coffee mugs, the little holders for your phones, coasters. They've gone all in. So I don't know, you got to have the money to buy the inventory, number one. But it's a great way to maybe fill a vacant storefront in your downtown. And again, if you can get your message in there that says, buying from us supports our local businesses, we're able to give them grants, that's great. They also have their QR code, so that that's in storefront windows and people can scan for the deals that they have. They also have a Love Local loyalty card that people buy for $30, and it gets them access to a lot of discounts. So they're putting out that message about love our community, and they're also selling merchandise to go along with it. And then, if you happen to have downtown dollars, I've heard many people saying they're afraid to buy gift cards from businesses, which was one of the things that we pushed early on to help support businesses. It's to get some cash in their door. But now people are afraid those businesses are going to close before they get a chance to use them. So they're more apt to buy a downtown gift certificate or downtown dollars. But that helps support local. It's what you're doing for businesses in giving back as well. You can show that, downtown Laramie, Wyoming, they like to tout how many they had sold. So the businesses saw that coming back into their businesses. Now, when I ran a local program, probably after 3 years, I want to say, we had over $5,000 of unredeemed gift cards. So that kind of created a little nest egg off to the side. And I know the state of Wisconsin had some rules about returning it to them if it hadn't been used in 5 years, but we left that money in an interest-bearing account, and it became a little bit of an income producer for us as well.
Kathy, I just
Yes.
want to let you know that it is 3 o'clock and we are scheduled to take a break at 3:15.
Perfect. I am coming up. I think we're going to cruise right into that perfectly, Anne. Thank you. I want to talk about, I think I have 8 categories. So earned income is very short. This is, if you've never had a rainy day fund or an endowment.
We have our poll, Kathy, remember?
Oh, yes. Oh, that's right. Yes, we do have.
All right, guys. Here's another poll.
Do you have a rainy day fund? That's a simple question. And that would be like, do you have money? When COVID hit, did you have 6 months worth of operating budget nested away to draw on to get you through this?
Okay. Couple more coming in, 5 more seconds, and then I will share the results.
Super. I love these polls. No. I'm going to write that down. That's a lot that don't, but that's not uncommon for a lot of small nonprofits. But what I note here is if you've never had one, you need to start planning for that when we come out of the COVID. Oh, that's right. I forgot we were going to ask how much is your rainy day fund. Sorry, Ann.
That's okay. For those of you that do have one,
For those of
obviously,
you that do.
so not that many are going to answer.
The 20 some percent of you who had one. So that's going to be about what, 5 or 6 or
Yeah.
7 people?
Yep. 5 more seconds on this poll and then I'll publish the results. Okay, there you go, Kathy.
Oh, that's good. 5,000 to 20,000. That's very good. Everybody should strive to be like those communities. That's very good. Thank you. So,
Absolutely.
you know, how do you get a rainy day fund, right? So one of our communities here in New Hampshire, Goffstown, they were having their downtown cleanup day and they noticed a elderly woman who lived right in downtown. Her fence was, you know, chip paint and really needed a new painting. So they asked her if they could paint it for her. And she said, oh, that would be wonderful. She donated stock to them after that. It was over $5,000 in stock. So they sold it, and that's how they created their endowment fund. And they set a policy that said, we're not going to touch our endowment fund until it gets up to $250,000. That's being very fiscally sound for a nonprofit. It's okay that you have that money set aside because that's how you know, people always say Main Street should be self-sustaining. There's only one self-sustaining Main Street program that I know of in this country, and that's in Gloucester Courthouse, Virginia, because somebody donated a shopping mall to them. And they operate that and net about $250,000 a year. Other than that, we all need to have those 3 pieces of the stool coming together to fund us. So one way to accomplish that is to look for those kind of opportunities where people might make a significant gift to you. But another one might be that if we do have an event that raises money, if you had, you know, an event that raised 10,000, put 10% of that in that endowment fund. So it becomes your rainy day fund. You might even solicit people specifically for that. And maybe even, you know, a letter to your high school alumni. One of the programs in Iowa sent that to, they went through all the yearbooks, found all the people who became doctors and lawyers and architects out of town, and they sent them letters asking them to fund their facade grant program for $500, and they got a great response. They had like $10,000 within a week of having sent those letters out. So think about how you might do that. Amazon Smile, I feel bad for Gardner. I am not an Amazon shopper, so they've only gotten 26 cents donated from me. This is my account with Amazon. You know me as a Main Street shopper. I think I had to get a cable for something. So 26 cents went to Gardner from me. But you can see, sign up for Amazon. While I don't promote shopping on Amazon, a lot of people are shopping there now. It's a great way to get some money coming in, little bit, piece by piece, right? They've given out a lot of money so far. So get your community hooked up with that. Grants, I'll just mention the Heartbeat fund that's going on right now that's going to help your businesses. Again, if your program goes away, you're not going to have access to this. That's another selling point to your city. Our first round closed already. There'll be another round in September, so keep your eyes peeled for that one as well. AARP has grants that are out there as well. They just had another round closed, but they, you know, they always have different kind of grant programs going on, and we're always pushing grant information out the door. Just to talk about fundraising events, these are events that people attend typically, those things that they came to in your communities because it was for the purpose of raising money. This is a trivia contest that Charlestown Now, the one that has the song, Rockin' That Curbside Pickup. I loved how they played trivia. People paid to get in. One of the screens always had their logo on it, so it always promoted their organization. And between every trivia question, businesses paid $10 to have a little commercial read. And so they did this, like, I don't know if they were doing it every night, but there were lots and lots of teams that wanted to play trivia with their organization. So it reminded me of the, so you think you know Rockland and you think you know Bath. You could take those, I don't know if you're doing those events anymore, but those are typical, or those would be perfect events to take online. You know, you could still wear the costumes. You're still educating people about the community. You could even still do the silent auction online as well, and have people bidding online. If you want to look at doing a fundraiser online, Bidding for Good is one of those places that can have that happen. Businesses might put merchandise on there to sell as well. This was the most recent successful event that I just was privy to, which is in Siloam Springs. Their annual major fundraiser is the Maine event, and last July 24th, they raised $17,000 in one evening. It would cost $65 to attend, and even though you weren't leaving your house, it still cost $65 to attend. With that, they got a $15 certificate to the restaurant of their choice in downtown. That night, somebody from their ice cream shop delivered ice cream to their home. They got beer, and they got entered into a staycation. And again, they had their live and silent auction online. $17,000 in one night. And I think Siloam Springs is around 8,000 in population. Quincy, Illinois, their big fundraiser is their dinner on the street. Of course, you're not able to have that. Tickets were $100 a piece. They did lower the price of the tickets this year, but still they did the dinner, and people just drove up, and they were given their dinner and a bottle of wine. So all of your events don't have to go away. Some just need to find a new way of happening. So even one like this, it was great popularity. It's the message you send with that. Oh, there's polls 3 and 4. Okay, so now we're ready, not 3 and 4, 5 and 6, right? So this is where I ask
Yes, here
the
we
categories, go. Right. Which category of funding provide the largest source of funding for your organization right now?
And you can click more than one if you have 2 at the top or something. Right, and Joanna?
Yeah, so like if your city gives you 30,000 plus you raise 30,000 off of special events, check those 2. We know you probably have a lot of money coming in from each of these activities, but which ones are the largest? So we're trying to look and see which ones are the ones that you might be having the most challenges with raising funds.
So about 5 more seconds for responses, and then I'll share the poll. Okay.
Super.
All right, there you go, Kathy.
Municipal support and special events. So the special event one is one that is going to be our biggest challenge, right? And hopefully the municipal support is going to stay in place. But I know when we do our breakout groups with the municipal support, I think we'll hear some concerns or activities there. And did I have a second question?
Yes,
to that
you do.
One too? Yes,
you sure do. Hold on one second. And here's the second poll.
So in 2020, in which of these categories of funding are you expected to have the largest decrease?
And this is a one answer, not multiple answers.
Most of you had municipal funding as your largest, so be curious to see if you think that's where you might see the largest decrease, or if that might be your special event income, or maybe even your fundraising events.
That is what I expect. Let me share the results. There you go. I can tell
Oh,
you, Kathy, that we've had a few main streets who have been surprised about the generosity of their municipalities. But then we have others that are struggling with municipal contributions, especially in Maine with revenue sharing, the municipal. And also we heard from our federal delegation that that is one of the federal delegations, all elected officials in Washington's number one concerns is the municipal funding for them nationally and in Maine.
well, applause to you all for that. Means you have done a great job working with your municipalities, and you have gotten your message across as to the importance of your organization. So yeah, that special event income is going to be the challenge for us, but hopefully we've cut our expenses because we're not doing those as well. So hopefully it's not going to impact us too big. Again, another shot from the archives. I know I had to take a picture of that. I use that occasionally as well. We're going to have you break out into breakout groups. And in each of the groups, we just want you to have a conversation with each other. You got the sort of worksheet ahead, and I'm going to cover each one of these. So if you're from different places, we hope that we're going to get you into different groups. But these are the 4 that we want you to talk about, and hopefully you've got the sheets with you as well. But, talk about the funding. It doesn't sound like it's threatened through you, but who's had success? What's your message? How do you think you need to continue to prove your worth to them and showing that return on investment? And I'd love to hear a success story about maybe how they've increased their investment and something you can share with other people. The second category is special events and festivals. That might be the hopping one today. Christina is going to lead that one, right?
Right.
With the cancellation of how can we shift? So talk to each other. What's one of your events that you think you could take to virtual, and bounce these ideas off of each other. How you might change how you generate income, how you might create smaller events that might bring in as much money, or how you can secure those sponsorships to shift to other things. The third category, which is Anne, and is Delilah going to do number 1, municipal support, or?
No, Jane Palmer
Jane.
is going to do it.
Yes,
Yes.
Jane. Right,
Yep.
Jane.
Yep.
Thank you, Jane, for doing that one. Residential support, Anne's going to do that one. I think a lot of communities said they see that this as the biggest place you might be able to grow your budget. How will we message them? What are the best ways to reach them? How might you reach those that are still working and giving money? There's people like me that are at home still working, and but you might not see me in your downtown. So how do you reach those people? And the last category, I'll be in that group on general business solicitations. And we'll just be talking about, how do we still get that support from our downtown businesses, but other businesses in the community, and looking for those businesses in our communities that maybe are doing really well right now. So we're going to do that. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple comments in the chat, and then we're going to have a break, right?
Yes.
And then we're going to come back to the breakout room. So
yes.
Julie said that our biggest challenge is municipal support. Our message has been fantastic. It's just the purse strings are tight. This year is a particularly hard year to turn around. And Delilah says, good point, tighter purse strings, and it's not like the Main Street programs can control the political winds in a town. So it just so happens that Julie and Delilah will be in that municipal discussion group. The person who's your lead, so Jane, Christina, Kathy, and myself, you do not have to be the person to report out. We're just asking you to help facilitate the conversation. And if someone else is willing to do what Kathy asks right here, sorry, Kathy, I didn't mean to take your slide.
Nope. That's okay.
Is tell us some of the takeaways from your group discussion, and were there some new ideas generated? And could someone share maybe a success story from your conversation that could be replicated? And Joanna also put that in the chat. So it is
Super.
3:16, and we are going to ask you to be back at 3:26. We'll give you a whole 10 minutes to get something to drink, take a walk, use the restroom. Joanna, is there anything else we need to queue up to get people into the breakout rooms?
I'll go ahead and open the breakout rooms now, so you'll be in them when you take your break and when you come back.
Great.
And so I tried to put everyone who, submitted a preference. I tried to put you in the right place, and others were just assigned to balance out numbers. So hopefully everybody's happy with the group they're in.
Yep.
If you're not, you can probably come back to the main group, and I can reassign you from there.
Great. So take a break, and we will get started in those groups in just about 9-10 minutes. Thanks.
Great. Thanks.
Joanna, should we pause the recording or let it keep going? Guess let it keep going.
I'm gonna open the breakout rooms now, and then
Okay.
and you should be able to come back into the ballroom, and we
Okay.
can keep talking.
Okay, great. Hi.
Okay, let me see. I got a message from Cara in
Yeah.
municipal support asking for help, so I'm gonna go into that breakout room quickly.
Oh, okay. I was just there. It was working.
Okay.
And some of these people that are here may not have clicked on the go to the breakout room. So that could be why they're here. Okay.
Yes, everyone needs to just join when they can.
Yep. Okay.
So I will hop over and see if I can
All right.
help Cara. So Cara would like to go.
Cara back here.
Which one did you want to go to, Cara?
Residential support.
Okay. Did that pop up for you?
I don't think so.
Might just take a minute.
Christina, are you able to join the special events breakout room? Do you have that prompt? Uh-oh, she's frozen.
Oh, maybe she went to the room.
I guess she was, yeah.
Okay. Then maybe you freeze before you go to the room.
And let me see, it looks
Looks
like
like Cara has gone.
got where she needed to go. And
Good.
yeah, I'll pause the recording because I don't think it's recording in the breakouts, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it does actually.
I'm gonna pause it. Oh,
Okay,
did you? Okay.
I didn't. Hi, Joanna.
Looks like it.
Is Kathy here?
I'm here. I was muted. I was
There we
talking, but I
are.
was
Great.
muted.
And we were forced to be back. We were having some great conversations, though, I wanted to say.
I know. We were too in our room. Thanks.
The countdown was kind of fun.
I think it's like, oh my gosh, we have to finish. Joanna, Zach says send him an email. So I'm not sure what that is for.
Probably for someone he was in his room with.
Yeah, I
So
didn't-
Okay.
you'll
I
have
didn't
to
mean to send everybody.
resend that privately.
Okay. So Kathy, we have a reporter in our room and hopefully every other room. And Joanna, I pressed record again. So maybe we can do some,
Yeah, let's, why don't
Summary.
we start with our first group and Jane, I don't know if you had a recorder or you just had some people with some good stories who want to tell us what went on when you were talking about municipal support.
Well, I fell down on my duties. I didn't get a recorder, all right?
No, that's okay. You didn't have to have one.
Yeah,
We want people to speak up now as well.
right.
So if
I
you
was-
want to
I
call,
took a few
if you
notes,
want to
Jane.
call on anybody in your group, you can.
Jane, I took a few notes for us.
Great.
Oh,
Good for you.
thanks,
Go ahead,
Julie.
Go ahead,
Thank-
Julie. Right.
Julie, tell
So-
us what went on.
So we were just kind of really swapping stories of what our relationships with the city is. And I think because I'm probably the most junior organization in the group as far as relationships with the city. And
Julie, will you let everyone know where you're from?
Ellsworth, I'm from
Thank
Ellsworth.
you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Heart of Ellsworth is our organization.
And Kathy,
and-
that's our newest affiliate that came on in February.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're pretty excited. So I would say, I just want to be clear, it's not that our relationship with the city is poor, because I think our relationship with the city is not, as far as communication and camaraderie and things like that, and what we put on together is all good. I just would like to see more funding, plain and simple. Of course, I'm an accountant, so that's the way that rolls. And so people were just talking to me about their levels of support and some ideas that they had about how they were able to make that happen. Things like constant, pretty continual contact, not just expecting to have contact at the time that you want to ask for support, but throughout the year, and who people have for relationships like that, whether it's city council members. My takeaways were things like an impact report. A lady from Biddeford talked about her impact report. That looked like an absolutely outstanding document. I think we might try to use something like that. Having city council members or other members either serve on your board or serve on committees. That seems like a smart thing too. I'm not sure if people will be willing to serve in two capacities like that in our town, but hopefully we can consider that. So those were some of the things that were our takeaways. I don't know if I missed anything. Anyone wants to add anything?
I think you covered it very well, and if anybody else wants to add something, please do. But I was pleased to hear most everyone felt their relationship with their municipality was solid, and they could count on it, and they weren't threatened or felt like that was in jeopardy. Julie was the one who isn't sure about that, and the city just cut their amount that they were supporting in half. So that was the only concern. Anybody else in that breakout room? Delilah or Sally, have anything to add?
Oh, I think that was good.
Great.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Nancy.
This is Nancy from Woodford's Corner. We don't get a nickel from the city. And I'm wondering if we are the only entity that isn't getting any money from their municipality.
It is true, probably, Nancy, that is the case. But I do want Kathy to understand, and I'm sure this is a similar issue with other urban Maine programs. Friends of Woodford's Corner is a neighborhood group, as you know, and there are other, the city's viewpoint, Nancy, is, oh, if we give to Friends of Woodford's Corner, we have to give to all the neighborhood associations. Am I right? Is that kind of the message you've heard from the city?
I don't know if we've ever asked them for money, truthfully.
Okay.
And we are not a neighborhood association.
No,
We're
I know
a
you're
Main
not.
entity.
Yeah.
And there is no other Main Street entity.
Absolutely.
There is a downtown.
Absolutely, 100%. You are
Yeah.
an affiliate within our program, and you are
Yeah.
the only one in the city. What I'd heard from Teresa is that the city thinks of you as a neighborhood association, and that there are lots of other neighborhood associations, and so that they feel like they couldn't fund you because of that. So like an equity issue of if they fund one, they have to fund all. So that's just what I've heard. But maybe we need, and Kathy, is there any just information you can share about urban Maine and how they deal with that?
Well, with all of our urban programs, the city funds all of the districts, actually. So like where we have a coordinator, like an Ann on staff, those places do give money to the districts. Otherwise, they'd be tripping over each other, asking the private sector for money. So like in Boston, I think they all each get something like $60,000 or $75,000 a year.
Wow.
And they have, I want to say 26, 28 districts in Boston. In Orlando, I think they get 75, even maybe more than that. So that they have to do that. But it also is targeted to things as well. So maybe the thought there is, what do you want to get done? And what might be something the city would naturally pay for, like banners or trash receptacles, or even a facade grant program or business incentive program, and put a dollar value to that, so that, you know, one of the easiest return on investment numbers is working with facade grants. So if they give you $15,000 perhaps to do a facade, to do some facade grants, and it leverages $200,000, then you can take it back and say, look what your money leveraged. Or if you give us so much, we'll try to leverage that from the private sector. So if you can, if they can give you $20,000 and you can leverage $100,000 on the private side, then that's a message to keep coming back to them. And then if they had other other neighborhoods who did the same thing, that's still a really good investment for them.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I'm also thinking, Nancy, that, you know, you guys are still relatively young, and maybe now that you are, you know, been in this program, we need to work with you to kind of frame up your ask of the city of Portland, and show your economic impact, or like Kathy said, tie it to a specific thing with the city and differentiate you from the little local neighborhood organizations. I don't know. And I know Sarah's smiling over there, because Sarah works in the city of not for the city, but for Greater Portland Landmarks. And in the chat, Delilah says, I think as long as a neighborhood affiliate program can show economic impact and matching funds, they should push for city funding. And that's her opinion. So that's kind of where I've landed, Nancy. We need to take that conversation a step further with you guys.
well, and I was going to say for Julie, with, you know, that funding is cut again to show the cost of things. You know, people cherish, you know, like the events that you have run as well. So, you know, if they cut your funding and then COVID's different, but if you could say, well, I guess we can't do the Christmas parade this year, and show what it costs for you to put that on. Executive director time, the volunteer time, all your expenses, and show them, you know, for us to put this Christmas parade on as an organization, costs us $25,000. And we can't sustain that and do all the other good things in the community if you're going to cut our funding. So we have to cut something out. Maybe find something tied to their heartstrings that they don't want to see go away, and show them the value of that. That's why we want you to keep track of your volunteer hours. So you can say, wow, it takes, 2,000 volunteer hours to put on an activity like that. And it happens because we have the money to operate otherwise. So it's that return on investment and what you're leveraging. I'm starting to lose my voice.
Okay. Well, while Kathy's sipping, we'll see if her voice comes back.
It's just the end of the day, apparently.
Okay.
Sorry.
You want to move on to one of the other groups, Kathy?
Yes, absolutely. Let's go to the special events and festivals. And I think Christina led that one.
She did. Thank
I
you,
did,
Christina.
and I too, like Jane, failed at getting someone to report out, so I guess I'll start. And others feel free to chime in. I also was unaware of the timeline, so I didn't hurry anyone up, or I just let the conversation flow, whether or not that was good or bad. But some of the takeaways were that no one in the breakout room has really moved to virtual events. There's been some discussion around it, but I don't think anyone in the room had actually done one yet. There was a theme that kind of ran true through for several of the communities. People were looking into opportunities to kind of do Belfast in a Box was one example. Gardner's looking at this for possibly for the holiday season. Both Gardner and Skowhegan, we're going to be doing kind of simulating in our own ways, of course, the success that the Kennebec Valley Chamber had with their recent Brewfest in a Box. Both Gardner and Skowhegan have successful beer fests in our towns, which obviously are not going to be held this year. So, and Skowhegan's getting ready to announce on Wednesday that we're going to be launching our Skowhegan Craft Brew Bag, which will go on sale Wednesday and for a period of 2 weeks, and then we'll actually distribute it to people before Labor Day weekend. And Gardner's in discussion about that as well. So the theme seemed to be how can we take the products of our communities and turn them into something that of value for people to purchase and take away with them. So other activities from SACO included murals and crosswalks, painting crosswalks and finding sponsors for those. So kind of shifting from actual events and moving more to like project focused things that would include sponsorship. So that was another takeaway. Other thoughts? Anyone from the group want to chime in?
I have a question for you on your on the sort of brew fest in a box or that kind of thinking. Is part of that going to bring support to the organization as well, or is that just going to go back out to the businesses that are supplying product? Are you going to build that fundraising component in?
Well, I can speak for Skowhegan, and I think the answer will be the same for Gardner based on what we were just talking about. But we, Kathy, never plan an event or a program that doesn't provide some level of income generation for our organization, and that's always built into our budget. So, and in fact, I told the board and our committee that's working on this that I did not want to do Skowhegan Craft Brew Bag or whatever our event was going to be called unless we made $5,000 in net income minimum.
Double thumbs up.
Great, Christina.
Good idea. Anybody else in that group have any
Or
thoughts
questions?
or ideas? I
Or
think
Or questions for the events group? I do like the example Kathy told me about a small fundraising event where they delivered locally made ice cream to the people on the virtual event, right? I don't remember
Yes.
where it was.
Yeah, that was Siloam Springs.
Well, I have to say that's just pretty darn cute.
Yeah, right. You're online waiting to bid on the live auction stuff and the sign, and then there's a knock on the door and there's your ice cream. You could do the same thing with beer,
True.
I suppose, or any of those goodies that are in downtown. Might put some people to work doing the delivery as well. Any other questions or thoughts on special events? Even if you weren't in the special event group, do you have a particular success you wanted to share?
It looks
This
like
is,
David has a question.
David?
Yeah, I'm just curious. It sounds like a lot of us are thinking in terms of some kind of like subscription box or some way to package something up, kind of prioritizing our downtown. One of the things that's been flagged by my board as well as some other advisors is around like unrelated business income, depending on how we structure it. Is that something that anybody has looked into or explored? There's some concern that if we were to do that, we might run into some issues there.
Wow. I
I would
dealt
think
with
if you're- I would think
unrelated.
if you're buying it and reselling it, it's not any different than anything else you would be buying or selling. I mean, you're not. I think I don't know how there would be an issue there.
That if they're saying that if depending on what the when we built it out, they were saying based on those revenue numbers, that unless we could further articulate how it was tied to mission, that we might run into some.
Well, you're promoting your downtown.
That they're saying about like the revenue is mostly like depending on how much money we're going to make off of it. If it
You
was
guys are gonna make like hundreds of thousands.
that they're saying anything over like 10 grand like might be an issue.
Yeah,
So I dealt with unrelated business income many years ago when I was a museum director, and we had a museum store, and there were things we were selling that were outside the mission of the organization. And I think what I would propose, unless anyone knows the answer, is that I reach out to Maine Association of Nonprofits and just see if I can get some clarity on that, Dave. And,
Yeah, so that would be helpful. So the one of our board members, who's the executive director of United Miscos Charities, she sent over like a 3-part test that she had to go through, and we did not pass that 3-part test based on what we did.
Okay.
So anyways, that's all. I just wanted to bring it up since it sounds like a lot of us are thinking in terms of something like
I
that.
just want to make a mention, David. I think that you're smart in thinking about that. I do know that there's a statewide agency, the Maine Crafts Association, has been dealing with this issue last year. And if you're interested in maybe possibly exchanging an email or a conversation with Sadie Bliss, their executive director, I'm happy to connect you with her.
it's a good idea too.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Absolutely.
So I'll be back in touch about that. I put that on my to-do list.
Super.
Can I just chime in here real quick?
Yeah.
So when we think about anything that we do in Skowhegan, we think about what came out of our strategic plan and how Skowhegan's future looks. And we're supposed to be driving the future of Skowhegan, or that's what our mission is essentially. And so local food is one of the local food and outdoor recreation are the two brand pillars, if you will, for the future of Skowhegan. And so we will definitely and wholeheartedly tie our Skowhegan Craft Brew bags that we're going to be selling here to that key brand pillar, and ultimately will mean that we're moving the mission forward by promoting our local food producers and our local craft brewers. So I know it's not the same for everyone, but I think that's, I think the bigger picture, you can tell that story if you turn to the bigger picture. So.
Excellent comment. Thank you. Other special event comments? All right, Anne, how about your residential support group?
Well, I did follow the rules. So I asked Dave to be my reporter. And I do have the notes, Dave, so we can.
You're
I'm
breaking up a
totally-
little bit. Do you want me to jump?
I know.
I don't know if you're breaking up on everybody, but if you want me to jump in and share, or if you want to share, and it doesn't matter.
Go ahead, Dave. She looks frozen.
Okay. This was an interesting one because it sounds like for some of the other groups there would tend to be general consensus, but for us we had, Rockland and Saco with really like kind of struggle in this area, and some others like especially Bath that seemed to have great success here. So it was an interesting conversation. I mean, it sounded like generally the success stories came down to both consistency as well as messaging both the personalization of that messaging as well as the ability to have that messaging be outside of the event typical messaging. And the other thing was really about articulating like worth within the community. I think something that from the negative side, I mean, Saco and Rockland both have a lot of like community users of the organization, but those people tend not to give. You know, another thing that kind of came out of it was similar to that consistency messaging of just like not being afraid to ask over and over again the same people for money. And that's kind of what this is all about, and that it takes time to build that machine. But it was interesting to hear that another kind of catalyst for some of this was Ellsworth had mentioned that the public process of becoming an affiliate program like has helped them with this. But one thing that, you know, I'll speak for Rockland, we've struggled with is our downtown has evolved over the years, and many of our residents like no longer spend as much time and feel like the downtown is more for tourists than it is for them. And we've struggled to have those people give even small amounts to our organization. So it was interesting to hear feedback from some of those success programs about how they've been able to really, really fine tune that messaging and through small donations, build up this kind of giving machine locally. I'm sure there's other things that I can touch on, but that was the general gist of it.
Anybody else from that group?
Since I'm so unstable, I am typing some things in the chat just to support Dave or the takeaways from our.
You're cutting out on us, Anne, but I think you said you're going to post things, so that would be good as well. One of the things I thought in residence, and you know, I think it goes back to some of the things that were talked about under special events too, with giving them something. I find residents respond to that. I kind of get something from giving to you as well. Like, you know, whether it is that ice cream delivered to your door, you know, make a donation today and we'll run your favorite ice cream over to you if you happen to have that kind of shop in downtown. The other part is the timing of when you might do a residential campaign, and how we're going to talk about this at the end, but you know, thinking about when all your funding comes in, when you get your money from your city or your town, when perhaps your event income would be coming in, and when is the best time to make that residential approach to people as well. A lot say that fourth quarter is the time that most people do their fundraising, because people, I don't know that they have more money, but they seem to be more generous at the end of the year. But speaking of COVID, I've written out more charitable contribution checks in the last 2 months than I maybe made in 8 months last year, because the need is so great out there. So just thinking about what the timing would be for when you think about running your residential campaign. Did anybody who has a good residential campaign, what's your timing on it? Year round? Is it a 6-week period?
We try to get ours into homes prior to Thanksgiving, with the thought that we send our annual report, so people have a reading material to look at while they're with families for Thanksgiving, which of course may be a little different this year, but that's been in the plan in the past. Yep. We have added in a 6-month ask this year with the hopes that people, residential folks now might be willing to give.
Kathy, can I?
Yeah, hi, Bill, go ahead.
Well, Bath starts campaigns usually pretty early in the year, organized to wind up in the fourth quarter, yes. One of the things that interesting during this pandemic, we've had a number of situations where people just walked in with a check and handed it to the merchants. We've had campaigns where businesses went out to their customers and asked them for help, and they've had pretty good luck. The other thing that I have been wrestling with lately is that we've got, particularly along the coast, immense numbers of tourists from out of state. Many of them have homes here, second or third homes. And the question is how to get to them. They come here for good reason because they love it and they want it to stay the way it is. And so somehow we need to get to those people because I think they probably are excellent support funding for our downtown communities.
Yeah, good thought, Bill. I heard a report on Manchester TV station that our school districts up north are getting a big spike, like 20-30% more students, because all the people in their second homes decided to stay through the school year. I'm like, well, those people need to be tapped into, right? If they can have a second home. I just pulled like the latest fundraising solicitation I got from the Society from the Protection of New Hampshire Forests. And they always get me every year because they send this little flyer and it says, if you give just $20 more, you'll get a container of maple syrup. So every year they get me to raise my contribution by $20 because I want to get my jar of syrup from them. Comes from their trees and their forests that they own. That's what I mean about residents respond to sort of that experience. Yeah, they'll attend that virtual fundraiser at $65 because they'll get a $15 restaurant certificate and they get ice cream delivered to their door. So you might think about, is there some sort of little thing that you can do as an incentive or an add-on when you try to get those folks involved?
Yeah, I have some
Yes.
things in the to share, and I'm sure Christina's writing down that maple syrup idea because Skowhegan is in Somerset County, which is the
Yes.
largest county producer of maple syrup in the country, even though Vermont passes us as a state.
Ah, very good.
From the chat, we have a number of things from Tabitha and from David related to UBIT. We will be saving the chat so that you guys will get a copy of this. Tabitha put in a great link. Delilah where was your comment? She was putting in a plug for Maine Association of Nonprofits. And Cara, do other directors do a Facebook birthday type fundraiser? Delilah says, I've done it and my board president has. Those tend to each yield an average of $2,000 for Heart of Biddeford. Ooh.
That's a great idea. I see those on Facebook all the time.
Yeah, that is great, Delilah. And then Cara asked the question, has anyone had success with sending a postcard to all residents of your town to both educate and to raise awareness and act as a giving component? Any thumbs up on that by anybody? Anybody done that?
Doesn't sound like it.
And let Lori in, who is our presenter. And then Delilah, would you describe, please, how the birthday fundraiser works? Nancy Ketch from Holton is interested.
Just on Facebook, there's an option, make a fundraiser. I can't remember where exactly, but I'm sure if you looked it up, there'd be a page describing it. And then you just put in a dollar goal and you post it on your page and do some reminders. And the good side is pretty much everybody you know gets it in their feed, and friends from Minnesota and California who, like me, will do $10 or $25. As well as local people. The downside is it's not necessarily generating the community, local resident piece, primarily, but sometimes you just need money.
Great.
I love that it brings in money from the outside.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, back to you, Kath.
All right, the last one is the one that I was in, which is the general business solicitations. We didn't take notes, but I did want to call on on Matthew to talk about what was going on with his program and share his successes. And you had a
Thanks.
question as well, I think.
Well, we during this process, we the board came together with our staff and strategized how we can engage our business community that may not have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. So we polled staff and board members to see, go through a list of businesses, create a list, and then divide it up to see which board members had a personal relationship with a particular business, and then if they had not been negatively impacted, to reach out for business support. We've had some success with this. It hasn't been 100%. Like I think I said earlier, the concern could be that even though a business is doing very well during COVID, we noticed that our local liquor store, our local hardware store, our local lumber yard, they're all doing really well this year. They're having some of their best sales numbers ever. I think people are using those stimulus dollars to fix up their homes. Unfortunately, drinking's on the rise. But in any case, we've attempted to recognize some businesses were positively impacted by this pandemic and reached out to them. So I think that it took some effort on our part, but very easy lifting, really, in virtual communication was, we sent emails and follow-ups. We've seen some success with it.
We're probably going to put in over $3 grand from that.
Awesome.
Wow. And Zach, you know, I was hoping you could share about your partners program, because as we talked as a group with general solicitations, some are doing the solicitation to please give to our program, and then some programs are built more around selling sponsorships for all the events. So when the events end, then we don't have sort of that general money coming in. But Zach, why don't you talk about your program?
Yeah, we have a tiered program that starts at $150 and goes up to $2,500, and businesses just make a contribution to us. There are some deliverables associated with it, and there's an option for people to pay monthly or pay once a year. And of the money that we bring in through that program, most of it is at the $150 to $300 level, and it's been able to grow organically just by the exposure and the recognition of existing partners. So we'll recognize a partner for being a partner, and we typically have other businesses who then want to join the partnership program. And so we've had good success in being able to grow that program, you know, prior to COVID, and it's a smaller dollar amount. And I was commenting to the group, you know, we don't have a ton of sponsorship income necessarily from our events. We have fundraising events that generate revenue, but a lot of it comes into that partners program.
And you had noted that since 2017, you had 126% increase in your partners program?
Yeah, so it almost, it's just about doubled. An increase of about $10,000 at $150 and $300 partnerships, which is also great to make the case for our support, because we have so many different people supporting what we're doing.
So we spent some time talking about, you know, and it, you know, it works different for every community, whether you use that approach of having the partners where you're asking them generally to support your organization and your initiatives overall, versus the sponsorship, which is, you know, just for each event. They get something back for that though, right? So when they sponsor your event, they're anticipating you're going to put a banner up, put their name on your ads. And sometimes that money comes from different funds. One might be the charitable contributions, where I'm writing, you know, somebody a check for $100 a year. The other one can kind of come out of their marketing budget though. So it's good to go after both. And I think it was, let's see, Tabitha who had asked me, you know, or somebody had asked, if you have partners, do you also ask them to be sponsors. And I always did when I was an executive director. There was money that we need to operate the program and pay the rent and the staff and all of those good things. But then there's separate money that we need for events. So I hit people up on both accounts. One is to support Main Street. The other is to support their marketing efforts by doing these special events that drew people into downtown. So it offers a little bit of diversity in how you sell it. And Sarah, I don't know if you wanted to bring up what your question was during our discussion and see if anybody else had any feedback on that.
Sure, happy to. So I had asked, it was slightly off topic, but we're finding that when we are reaching out to donors and partners, that one of the first questions we're being asked now is, do we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement? Have we taken any positions on social justice initiatives? How are we committing to change and to be a stronger, better, more representative organization? And I wondered if anyone else was dealing with or experiencing getting those questions up front from donors and potential funders at the moment.
So Zach said that they have a statement as well, which was pretty much developed around the national Main Street centers. But has anybody else come across that yet?
Delilah, you just finished drafting your last week with the Main Street directors?
Yeah, we have a statement, but we're working on a plan, but neither of those came out of people asking us for those.
Right, you had been working on it, sorry.
Any thoughts or questions, or has anybody else done a great job with your general business solicitations that you weren't in our group but wanted to share that with everybody? You're all just rocking and rolling and doing great. Nobody's got any problems with their general solicitations.
One of the things that I brought up in our group, I was in residential, but then we got talking about funding with banks and some of the larger organizations and having issues getting them to commit and say yes. They wanted to know what was their sponsorship going to be. My recommendation was a lot of those organizations have an actual fund versus a marketing budget. So fundraisers would be your marketing budget, but the fund itself would be the fund. And so telling your story and getting word out about the things that you're doing that are helping move your town forward that have nothing to do with events. You need to come up with your list of things that you're doing that is bringing commerce and things to your area that have nothing to do with the feel-good stuff that we do. Even though that feel-good stuff makes us money, you need to come up with other ways to tell that story to those larger organizations that have those funds available.
Yeah, good point, Brandy. It's also the timing of when you ask those things, because to get into the charitable fund, you have to ask the year before, right? So you have to be asking by this fall in order to be in their budget for 21 if
right.
You're not
so I mean, it's
already
worth
there.
Reaching out to those organizations that you have of when does their charitable fund get together? What kind of criteria do you have to hit? I mean, there are a couple large organizations that we still can't infiltrate their specific box that you have to fit in to get money from. Like New Balance is a huge organization for us, but it's a very small box. So, it just takes figuring out what points you need to hit in which organization and then showing them what it is that you're doing in your community that maybe you're not really talking about a lot, but that brings value that they normally wouldn't see because, you haven't lifted those veils, I guess.
Right. Christina, did you have something you wanted to add on that? I thought I saw your hand up.
Well, kind of, because Brandy's one of my board members, it kind of is similar to that, but we sent, as part of our recent ask through the board, I put together a bullet point list of the projects and programs that we're working on from an economic and community development standpoint, not related to events. And that was the message that we shared with through this recent ask. And we've also created new sponsorship opportunities for different projects that we're actually working on. So we've got this Art in the River project that we're calling Kennebec on Fire. And we got a business to sponsor that. And basically the sponsorship is a logo on the website, social media posts, tags, and their logo on any email that goes out about the project. So not only does it help to tell your story that way, but then maybe giving the business some incentive as part of that, story is helpful too.
You're not going to carve their logo out of wood and set it on fire out in the river?
that actually would be kind
That's actually a really good idea.
That would be worth $10,000.
Right.
Especially if it was a slow burn.
Yep.
Good luck with that. Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
So I have sort of a big question for everybody here, again, as sort of a young and new Main Street entity, where I feel like we have two challenges. One is we're in a sort of depressed business zone where the businesses just are barely breaking even. And so to ask them to give us money always feels like a major stretch. And then the second part is because we don't have a paid staff, we have an unbelievable board chair, and we now, even though our board keeps getting smaller, it's pretty full of very dedicated people. But we because we're so new and because we're in a marginal business neighborhood, and because we don't have any staff capacity, can feel like we haven't done that much, and therefore when we try to share our impact, it's not that impressive, which means nobody wants to give us any money, which means we don't have any money to have a bigger impact, and we sort of have this spiral that isn't going up. And I guess I'm interested in stories from you more experienced people with more money, of sort of how you broke out of that, fledgling business or fledgling organization mode and got into the big time.
Good question.
I mean, I know on behalf of Main Street Skowhegan is we looked at our downtown business support, and there again we noticed there are a lot of, I mean, even now we have a reduction in businesses that are staying open or even opening in our downtown, which is a concern. But ultimately, the support we do have or are getting is mostly tied to sponsorships. So they're getting something for their dollars, advertising or some sort of other benefit that's tied to an event where, so currently right now we're seeing a big decrease in income because of that. However, it was a great way to sell it to a business to get a benefit for their dollars. So it's a twofer. You're benefiting Main Street Skowhegan, which is a great engine of economic and community development in Skowhegan, but also your name's going to be listed in a radio ad or TV ad or during the event. So that was a great way for us to engage other businesses, even outside of our downtown, to sort of support our organization.
I have one thing to add, Nancy. I think that the three-legged stool of, municipality, small businesses, and residents kind of shifts a little bit in some of the communities. Melissa, I'm going to put Gardner out there for a minute. Gardner has, due to COVID and a lot of bad timing, one of the highest vacancy rates in our family of Main Streets right now. Melissa, is it 18?
I think 17, but
okay.
we had like 4 or so to begin with already.
Right, but it's pretty high, and it's gotten really bad since the pandemic started. But the shining silver lining to me is that Melissa has unbelievable, generous residential support. Because they were able in Gardner and even some of the small businesses slightly outside of the downtown, right, who are able to step up and support the Main Street effort. So even though they have a really, high vacancy rate, they managed to pull off the Kennebec Valley Downtown Relief Fund, where all these people donated money that we weren't expecting, sometimes $100 and sometimes, more, to do this business relief program with our Augusta program. So it kind of just showed me how things are shifting or shift in the moment. And I think Zach has also alluded to the fact that Belfast municipality is like, we get this community right now is our downtown and we need this to be vibrant and surviving. And his municipality is like, we want to give you more. Am I right, Zach?
Yeah, they said if we needed more to come back and ask.
Yeah. So I feel like things shift, Nancy, and not everybody, you know, is actually, anyway, I just, it moves. I guess that's all I'll say.
And I guess to answer Nancy's question, I mean, yeah, the businesses might not, but I would think the property owners would stand to benefit from you guys being there and
exactly, the residents. Yeah.
Right. And so I meant building owners, like commercial building owners, not just residents in place of businesses.
The other thing I'd mention, Nancy, is when you're just starting out, you're selling a vision of downtown. You know, you don't have a track record to run on. So you rely on these other folks around the screen and say, look, this Maine downtown center's been around for decades. Here are the examples of where this program has worked. It's an increment, you use words like it's incremental. And it needs to be, you know, community supported. We have to have, you know, that support, but you have to sort of sell what the program is about and where you can be, get people engaged with, you know, what should we do to make downtown better? And then, you know, then you start to develop that track record and can do more funding. But yeah, your small businesses are not going to be probably your major or primary funders of the program. They weren't in my community. It was my city, it was my events, it was well, I had a business improvement district as well, but you just have to build on that. You're selling the vision right now and get your community engaged in establishing that vision. And then hopefully the money will start to flow with that. I want to do a time check with Ann because we were going to have this discussion go till 4:30 and it's now 4:32.
Yes. So we have Lori Bowie here. So we do want to wrap up, Kathy. Are there any closing remarks?
I'm good on my end. I hope that this was useful. I know Ann's going to do a poll for you at the end as well. And do I have to bring my screen back up or can you do a poll without me having to do that?
We are good to do a poll without you, Kathy.
Super, super. Well, I'm going to hang in here and I'm going to listen to the rest and still be around for Q&A at the end. But I appreciate all the feedback. You all gave me some good ideas as well. That's what sharing is about.
So the other major finding during our Downtown Together phone calls was in addition to fundraising, we also felt like there were lots of questions and struggles with our organizations related to cash flow and kind of some financial management best practices. So I asked our new finance director, who started during the pandemic, and I have never met my coworker in person yet. So I'm going to pass it over to Lori Bowie, who's our new director of finance at Maine Development Foundation and has a full career of nonprofit financial management experience to share some best practices. So Lori.
Thank you, Ann. I really enjoyed participating on the last few minutes of the conversation. It sounds like you've had a great afternoon with Kathy. And I was happy to be asked to share some thoughts. I have in no way comprehensive list of things to focus on, but I wanted to share a few things that I feel like have helped me in the past 18 years. I've been a finance director, HR director, executive director for a relatively small nonprofit in Maine. And some of the things you learn the hard way, and sometimes it's nice to just have some high-level thoughts on things to be watching for. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. I think probably the most important thing I would suggest, and in terms of helping establish cash flow, in terms of helping establish kind of some stability, is to establish an 18-month development and/or fundraising plan. I refer to it as development plan. I know that you have been all talking about it as a fundraising plan. And within that 18-month plan, identify the resources that you have, identify whether you're planning on employees doing initiatives, contract labor, possibly need consultants, so that you've thought through what you'd like to have it look like, but then really looked at the how you might begin to accomplish it. The importance of establishing just diverse revenue streams within that, so it's not just any one type of revenue, which I know I heard some great conversation about many different types of revenue, and spreading that over all quarters and months, and not having it be backloaded. So that can take some time with volunteers, board members, to look at how can you spread activities over the year in a state like Maine, where sometimes things are challenging at certain times of year in terms of getting participation. So that's worth the time at the front end, trying to have some activity, some development activity in every quarter at a minimum. The other thing I would say is how important it is to share that document with staff and development volunteers, making sure people are understanding the breadth of what's trying to be done. Because I think when you have people see that level of detail, they have a better sense of how they fit in. So I would definitely share that. The second thing I would share is the importance of having the organization's annual budget more conservative than the development fundraising plan. We use the term stretch goals for the development plan, and making sure budget was set to a much more conservative number. And that just allows for the obvious, if you've got some variance to plan, that you're not always in the position of having to make drastic expense cuts. You can handle a little bit of those variances that naturally are going to happen. Third, I would say evaluating the performance towards that development plan and annual budget monthly is really, really important, but at a minimum quarterly, because I think it's very important to look at what adjustments you need to make. You might have had assumptions 12 months ago that you really can see are not going to come to fruition, and what are you going to do to develop contingency plans? I feel like that's a big piece with cash flow, is you're always looking at how are we actually doing, because if you're generating losses, you can guarantee it's going to translate into negative cash flow. Like we want to try to match up revenue as much as possible to expense, and have some stability over the course of the year, so we're not dealing with surprises. To that point, large grants, I know every nonprofit to some degree has some larger gifts or grants that come in that you might have taken, could have taken a year to cultivate. Those typically want to get spread over the life of the grant. Oftentimes that's a 1-year period, but it's tempting to record revenue all in the month it's received, and you feel really great about your performance at that stage, but then it doesn't get you through the time frame necessarily that it needs to. So being thoughtful about making sure that it's divided up over the period that you're going to do the work. And the last most important thing I think on many levels is to celebrate success with everyone involved. It's challenging work, and especially in times like today, there's a lot of creativity involved. There's a lot of accountability, and it's even more important, I think, to show our impact in the nonprofit world. So taking a minute to say, to celebrate and say we've done well, and acknowledging that with staff and volunteers is really, really important. So that's what I wanted to share today.
Thanks, Lori. I'm going to jump in because Anne, I think her internet connection has kicked her out. She's trying to come back in. But I would just ask if anyone has any questions for Lori, and Kathy, if there's anything specific that you wanted to prompt in terms of follow-up questions.
I just wondered, does anybody have an 18-month plan? I love planning that far out. Anybody going more than, or are y'all sticking to like the 12-month calendar year or your fiscal year? Yeah. So I'm gonna guess Jane's in between on things. Sounds like most of them are doing 12 months.
And I think that you raised another reason why it's a really good practice, Kathy, and that is you've got to get ahead of of other organizations' budgeting cycle. Because I know in my world, I heard a lot of times it would be, we've already committed funds for this year, check in with us next year. So if you're always thinking out at least 6 months into that next year, that's really, really a positive thing to do.
Yeah. And then I think there are times when, you know, I've seen some grants come up that give you about 10 days to respond to them as well. And so you really need to sort of be aware of those funds, but sort of have your standard grant language or who you are and that financial information ready to roll when those opportunities come by. With that first round of the Hartford grants, that $1 million that we're giving out to businesses, I guess Main Street programs could have applied. It wasn't our preference, but some did. I think the next round it'll specifically say for-profit businesses. But did anybody apply for the Hartford Fund for your organization? No, I think most people saw it as a business grant fund. But that'll open up in September, but we were going to take the first 500 applications, and within 5 days we had over 1,300. So we're oversubscribed, but there will be another round for that. And I think, as you probably all know, we also are trying to get $100 million through Congress. I've been anxiously awaiting a return call from Jean Shaheen's office to make our pitch for her being on the Appropriations Committee. If that happens, that's $75 million for our coordinating programs, which then they can choose to pass through to you as programs, incentive programs to your businesses, and then $25 million would be set aside for helping small businesses. And if you still have any energy to do more advocacy on that, they're still in a stalemate with the new stimulus package, and we keep knocking on the door. And I think if anything, even if we aren't successful, they're going to know who Main Street is after this, because just about every senator has been contacted by numerous people. Now we're at the level where we've asked people to check in with your congressman as well, and hopes that Main Street funding will come through. That would be pretty significant for us, and that follows right off the heels of that $1 million from the Hartford. We've never been able to offer $1 million in grants to businesses or Main Street programs in the past. The best we've done is probably the Grills grant, which that was so successful. That one was for Main Street programs, and was we were just giving out 5 $10,000 grants, and Joe Grills and his wife were so impressed they added 3 more. So they put $80,000 out of their own pocket into funding Main Street programs. So just being ready for those things when they come along. And I think Sarah was right in people asking about your diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that might be something you see popping up in more grant applications, is to just make sure, you know, your organizations are thinking about that and perhaps adopting a statement and eventually taking action to make sure those kinds of things are happening. Other thoughts or questions from you all? Anybody have a great idea? Did anything spur you to say, hey, I'm going to try and go do that virtual dinner and deliver some ice cream to somebody's house? Or any questions? You got a lot of great minds here that if I don't know the answer, I'm sure one of you does. Yeah, Phil. You raising your hand?
I got a question for Dave. Dave, did you find from closing off your Main Street that you received some more financial support from your businesses, thinking that was really being active for them? Or how did that work out?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we have definitely increased our visibility with our business community. And I think, especially with our restaurants, they feel extremely supported by our organization. During this time, we've made the decision not to go to them for additional revenue right now or an additional ask. But certainly our intention is to kind of do that when we feel the time is right. So to answer your question directly, yes, it definitely helped us with our relationships with our downtown businesses. And it also really helped us with the city because, as you may have heard, right, that was something that the city council really was pushing towards, but they needed somebody to liaise with all the businesses and understand what the needs were. And we're kind of going through a pretty big redesign of our downtown right now. So we've played a pretty critical role in that. But we haven't had it translate to revenue because we just haven't asked yet. But that's where it's been at.
You're laying the groundwork.
Yeah.
Good to monitor how the business are doing as it goes on. So if they start reporting big increases, then that's the time to ask, right?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of our businesses say that if we didn't do the things we did, that many of them wouldn't have opened, and a lot of them. But again, they're still down significantly, and maybe this is something that I take away from this workshop is that we just need to ask more and just feel better about asking, and maybe we just don't know and we should just ask. But yes, definitely it's helped. As
they say, they can only tell you no. But if you don't ask, you don't know if somebody's got that $2,500 in their pocket. As somebody who works, when I got my stimulus money, I gave it all away. I knew there were people who needed it more than I did. So it was extra money. There might be people like that in the community as well. Has Anne been able to get back? Sarah, do you have a question?
I just had a quick question on the grants that you mentioned. I know we had encouraged some business owners to apply for, and we knew it would be competitive, but the 1,300 applicants is pretty impressive. Have you guys made a decision about how you're going to award those grants, or when do you have any idea when people were here and when the second round will be?
The second round is in September. I don't know when in September, but September-ish. Some of our staff went through and filtered them because 50% of that fund is going to minority-owned businesses and women-owned, and then a third of it is set aside for Main Street America communities. Some of those might overlap as well. You had to be within a historic district. So they went through the first initial qualifying everybody. And now I have a file folder from submittable, and we are now reviewing those. So I'm going to guess it's going to take us a few weeks to get through them. And what is typical, like with the American Express grants, that 100,000 that went out, then once we decide, it has to go to them to get their blessing. So I would suspect that that might happen before we open the next round. I'm not positive. So I think their intent is to get it out the door quickly. They're also partnering with other corporations like Pandora, and they're soliciting their employees to raise more money for that fund. So it's an ongoing fund that we hope other corporations will contribute to. And so hopefully we can keep it going even at beyond September. So September will be the next round, but maybe we'll be able to keep that going for a while as well.
Awesome, thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, you bet. Has Anne been able to get back on? I know she had sort of wrap-up comments planned.
No, unfortunately, she just sent me a text. She says she thinks she's going to be in an outage till 6:30. So
no.
Okay.
I guess we'll do one last call for questions, and then I can do a quick wrap-up.
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank Kathy for her presentation. As always, it was right on. And thank you for coming on with us. And Joanna, you've done a great job of organizing us. So I'll turn it to you to wrap up.
Thanks, Jane. We just have 3 quick feedback questions, and these are different from the other poll questions. The responses are anonymous, and I won't be sharing them in real time, but we will be sharing them with Kathy and using them for our own purposes to improve. So I'm just going to quickly launch the first one. Okay. A couple more coming in on that. And next question. Here. A few more responses that time. Okay, I'm going to wrap this one. And last question. Okay. And I'll close that one out.
Easiest evaluations they've ever done, probably.
Yeah, it's easier to get the feedback while you're with us. I know some folks are already starting to hop off, so I'll just thank everybody again for joining and thank Kathy again, and Anne sends her apologies. We will save and share the chat as well as the slides from today, and everybody knows where to find us if you have any other questions or anything else we can help with.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck to you. Hang in there. Thanks for all you're doing.
Right.
Thank all of you.
Thanks, Kathy.